Hey friends, welcome back to the Field and Garden Podcast. It's your host, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and I'm really glad you're here today. And I am just so thrilled to introduce you, if you do not already know Ellen and about her business and how it all works and what sets her apart. You're really going to enjoy this conversation today. And even if you do know Ellen, I learned stuff. I've known Ellen for over a decade, and I just loved learning more about her, how she went from being a construction coordinator to a design studio owner that only uses locally sourced flowers, who wasn't really a designer. She was barely a gardener, y'all. And just this amazing business that she has started. I truly believe, as I mentioned in this conversation with her, that what Ellen's business model is all about is what the people really dream and imagine that owning a flower shop is about. Now, Ellen's shop is not a retail store. It only has like 4 hours of retail a week on Saturday mornings, because they are so busy engaging their flower community that they have built. Whether it's doing that Saturday morning get to meet the customers, or her book club, or the arranging wars, or doing weddings, she has built, as I say to her in the conversation, what they have is the kind of flower shop image you see on Hallmark movies. And I mean that in the best way. She is working really hard, don't get me wrong, but they are doing so much more relationship stuff to build their business than what I see happening in conventional flower shops. And you are going to love this conversation. So friends, meet my friend Ellen Frost of Local Color Flowers, who is also the author of the online course, Florist School Online, Growing Your Business with Local Flower Sourcing. Take a listen. Ellen, thank you so much for joining me here today. I just really want everybody to have a look inside of who is Ellen Frost and how did she become this. I see you as a trailblazer of rekindling this whole American florist. The way that we used to do this decades ago is coming back, and there's not a better time to do that than now, right? In this world of a global supply problem. So welcome. Thank you for joining me here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm excited to help share our story.
So just out of the gate here, tell us, who is Ellen Frost and how. I think you were a construction coordinator in your previous life or something similar. So how does a construction coordinator go to becoming a design studio owner who's sourcing local flowers for her business?
I know it is a long, windy road. Well, first off, I would say that for anybody listening who is just thinking about getting into flowers, it's never too late. You can change careers. You can learn a new industry. I always start by saying, yes, my background is in affordable housing development. I worked for affordable housing developers, both in California and here in Baltimore. And my last job was at a for-profit construction company as the vice president of affordable housing there. And I grew up in cities. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. I lived in San Jose, California, and San Francisco, and then here in Baltimore, all very urban places. I didn't grow up, certainly not farming, and I didn't even grow up growing a flower or knowing about a flower or a plant or anything. My dad worked at the steel plant. We lived in a very, blue collar neighborhood. People were police officers and teachers, and farming or flowers, it was not part of our life. When I moved to Baltimore in 1999, I got married soon after that, and my husband's great aunt sent us a bag of tulips as a wedding gift. And that was the first thing I had ever planted or grown. So I was, I don't know, 29 years old. So it wasn't like I had this long history of flowers. I didn't know what to do with them. I looked up in a book how to plant bulbs. I put them in the ground. The next year they came up. I thought I was an expert. And that's where it started.
That is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that was like the first sort of growing experience I had. And I had a little garden in this house. So I thought, well, maybe I'll learn more about gardening. So I took the master gardening program at the University of Maryland. And that was the first time I met people who grew things for a living, you know, people who were farmers, who were extension agents, who, you know, worked at community gardens. I never knew anybody like that. And I couldn't believe that that was a job. Like, you just farmed full time. Like, it just seemed completely foreign to me. But it was really fun. It was really exciting. And I liked learning about it. And so I took it sort of to the next step of, I started working part-time on a vegetable farm here in Baltimore. They did flowers a little bit, but mostly vegetables. And I just did it at night and on the weekends, and it was a hobby. You know, gardening is a hobby for lots of people, right?
Right.
But at that same time, two other things happened. It was like the convergence of all these things. Lots of my friends were getting married. And at that time, you know, you were the age of, you know, your late 20s, at least for us, late 20s, early 30s, people were getting married. And, you know, most of my friends sort of thought the way I did about things, like they liked supporting local things. We all worked at farmers markets for fun, and we knew a lot of farmers. We wanted to support them. And so we just started buying flowers from farmers we knew, and started doing flowers for people's weddings, which, you know, we had no skill, we had no experience, we had no training. It was basically like, take dahlias and salvia and put them in a jar and say you designed them and now they're wedding flowers. I mean, it was really, you know, really that simple. And I was also going to school to get my MBA, because I thought at my construction job I might get a raise or I might get a promotion if I had an MBA. I didn't really have any business background. And in that MBA program, I took an entrepreneurship class. I'd never thought of owning my own business. I didn't know anybody who owned a business. It's so funny to think back now, like I didn't know any farmers. I didn't know anybody who owned a business. Now everybody I know is a farmer and everybody who owns a business. I just didn't have that experience. And what that entrepreneurship class taught me was that you could do good in your community as a business owner. You could serve your community by owning a business. Growing up, I thought that you served your community through church or through politics or community service or, you know, these other things.
Right.
Nobody said to me, you can serve your community as a business person. Nobody mentioned that. So all of these things were like swirling around, you know, entrepreneurship, gardening, weddings, farming, all of these things were kind of swirling around in my hobby life. You know, my regular life, my 9 to 5 was go to work, do construction things. After that, I had a hobby. And then Amy Stewart's book, Flower Confidential, came out. And that to me was like the turning the screw. It really was the key. It was the missing piece for me, because at the end of the book, after talking, you know, for lots of people who have read Flower Confidential, after going through the whole global industry, at the end, she highlights some local businesses that were sourcing locally. And it was like a light bulb went off. And I thought, oh my God, I could take all these things and I could do this thing she's talking about in the book. And I said to my friend Marina, who started the business with me, we have to hurry up and do this, because everybody is going to want to do this when they read it. I mean, I remember the conversation. So we were at yoga, and of course we were always getting in trouble for talking. And I was like, we have to start this business soon so nobody takes the idea. And of course, 15 years ago, nobody was thinking of doing this. There was nobody, banging on the door trying to do it. But those were all of the things that came together for us to really think about starting a business that at that time was really just sourcing local flowers to design for people having weddings, because people having weddings there was no place for them to get local flowers. And so we thought that we could be a bridge between these two groups: farmers who never really connect with wedding customers, and wedding customers who would never know how to source from farmers. And that was how it started. That was how we began. And we started in 2008, and we're still going, and we still do lots of weddings. We still source lots of flowers. We source many more local flowers than we ever have before. So yeah, that's how it got started. That's me in a nutshell.
That's pretty dadgum awesome. So as some of the greatest entrepreneurs that I know, we dive into an area that we really know nothing about.
Nothing.
And you just go for it and do it. I mean, doing it is what I understand people's fear of, doing it wrong or failing. But let me just say that jumping in and just doing it is the best way to just get in.
Yeah.
So, all right. So that's how you got started. So for those listening that may not quite understand how the conventional or the traditional flower business works, let's just say, so how does the traditional business work? If you owned a flower shop, or if you are a designer that has a design studio like you, but you buy everything from a wholesaler, and what does that mean?
Yep. So that is like key, right? So the majority of florists, whether you're a retail florist, a wedding design florist, a home-based florist, the large majority of florists are buying from wholesalers. And what wholesalers are large sort of businesses that buy from lots of farmers all over the world, and they bring all the product to one place. So they aggregate all of these products from all over the world to one place. And then you, as the florist, you order from one place. You don't order from a farmer in California and order from a farmer in Colombia and a farmer in Ethiopia. You just you source from your wholesaler, whether it's Maesh or Delaware Valley or Potomac or any of these places. You, as the florist, buy everything you need from that place, and it's one-stop shopping. You order online, you can order any time of day, and that order comes to your shop or your home or your garage or your neighbor's house on a truck, and the stuff comes in a box, and you condition it, which means you unpack everything, you take off the plastic, you take it out of boxes, you trim it, and then you condition it with either water or hydrating solution. That's how you sort of reinvigorate flowers that have been out of water and have traveled across the globe. That is the way that flowers have been sourced since the early 70s, when global sort of shipping really took off. So since 50 years ago, this is how florists have been buying flowers.
And it hasn't always been that way, right?
It's not always been that way. When floristry, in my class, we talk a lot about this history. So when floristry started in the United States back, in colonial times, florists were buying from the farmer in the country. So if you were in New York, you bought from the farmer who was on Long Island, and that farmer brought the stuff into the city, and then you as the florist sold it in the city. And that was how it worked in every city across the country. You source flowers from the farmer in your community or farmers in your community. And it wasn't really until even like the early 1900s that you were sourcing from a farmer in the next county, because how were you going to get to the next county? You were on a horse. You were on a horse and carriage. That's how people got flowers. I mean, There were no
For
cars,
real.
there were no roads, there were no trains. I mean, it was not, you had to source locally. Everything was sourced locally. Your food was sourced locally, your clothes were
Yeah.
sourced locally, everything was. And it really wasn't until the late 60s and early 70s when global purchasing really started to take off. And that, to me, I think when I learned that information, it was really mind blowing to me, because I was like, how people source now seems like the way it always was, but it's not. And
Right.
I always think it's important for people to understand that the majority of the time florists have been in the United States, they had sourced locally.
And I think it's so interesting. Many of them have been torn down, but there are some surviving glass houses around the country. I think of MEMA, of Urban Buds, with them buying that abandoned property that had a glass house that, that's because they had growers right in the cities, right? I mean, that were because they sold everything. They didn't have to have delivery big 18 wheelers. Guess what, friends? They didn't have those back.
Totally. And we still buy from one grower with glass greenhouses, Hendricks Flowers in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
6 glass structures. They have been flower farming for over 100 years in their family. And to me, I mean, this is a much longer story, but I will just say that buying from a farmer like that, or buying from MEMA, who has the history, it's really special. It really differentiates your business. Every time I can tell the story of Hendricks to our customers, they are excited, they're enthralled. When I sell them heirloom scented carnations, that Hendricks is the last farm in the country selling these varieties. When I tell them those stories, they then also feel connected to that history. They then understand and can tell their dinner guests, hey, did you ever smell a carnation? Why don't you smell this one? It smells like cloves. Bet you didn't know they came from Pennsylvania in a glass greenhouse. I mean, it's the story on and on.
I have goosebumps, Ellen, from
Yeah,
you
Hendricks
just
is
saying
pretty
that.
special.
And me, I'm always the marketing thoughts. And I mean, what a story to be able to talk about on marketing. There's just so much opportunity with local, which we haven't even gotten there yet, right? Okay. So that's how the world thinks that the flower industry works. But we know that it didn't always work that way. And we know that you've been doing it for a decade and a half now in a very different way. And why don't you tell us what your business model that you have just perfected? And I just want to preface it with, as a commercial cut flower grower, I would hope that every customer I would ever come in contact with would learn from you. I mean, you teach customers why what we have is so special and how to buy it and find it and use it and market it. So tell us what you do.
So right from the beginning, we wanted to source local flowers. And we didn't, please do not, anyone listening, do not think that I went into this thinking, okay, 100 miles, 200 miles, this exact mileage. It was that we wanted to source flowers as close to home as we could, whatever that meant. And in the beginning, that was really close to home because I didn't know a lot of farmers and I only bought from people that were really close to me. So it was like 40 miles. And then in the winter, then when I decided I wanted to keep selling flowers in the winter full time, we had to figure out what that meant in the winter. So then we sort of expanded and said, okay, well, let's source from within 300 miles in the winter. But all along, the main thing was to source flowers as close to home as possible and sell them first just for weddings, but then for retail sales, for design class sales, for subscriptions, for all the things that you do with flowers. And so right now we do source all of our flowers locally. That's what we say. This is the terminology we use. We source all of our flowers locally from farms within 100 miles of Baltimore. And last year during COVID, everything was upended and we were buying from Long Island. We were buying from New Jersey. We were sticking with the idea that we were sourcing from as close to home as we could. And given what was happening with COVID, Long Island was as close to home as we could buy from in the winter. And so that's what we do. We source local flowers and we sell them to our customers in all the ways that florists sell flowers.
And so Ellen and I just did another chat together previous to this, and I know that y'all aren't privy to that yet. But a big part of it, we were going through her course sessions, and part of what really came out of that for me was this relationship building. And once you get relationships with these customers, I mean, it becomes as important to them as it obviously is to you. That local can mean different things at different times. But we're keeping in the spirit of what this is all about, right? About keeping the money as local as possible. And the one other thing I really want to point out is, Ellen, I need you to tell us where you live. Yes. And that you do this year round, and that is possible. That's always the big question mark I see on the top of people's heads.
Yes. So I live in Baltimore, Maryland. We are in zone 7A or 7B, depending on, the year and global warming. We do source locally year round. It is possible in this zone to do that. And there's lots of factors. We have spent 10 plus years building, not just building relationships with farmers, but building farmers. So helping farmers get started with winter growing. So we have both the weather on our side, we have relationships on our side, and we have commitment on our side. And one thing I'll say is, I always say this, Deborah Prinzing and I talk about this often, is that we have a model that is exclusively local. But that doesn't mean that you listening, that you have to source exclusively local.
Right.
Because it may not, I always have to think from where I'm coming from what my zone is, from what my relationships are. You may be, again, in Canada where it doesn't get, or Bailey, in Vermont. You might be Ardelia Farm, where you get frost at the beginning of September, and you don't really start planting until June. Your growing season is so small, you may not be able to source 100% locally. But to me, if you're always thinking closest to home sourcing, that might mean, going into the Hudson Valley if you're from Vermont. It might mean, for DC, we have a friend, Little Acre Flowers in DC. They source everything locally. They source from, as far south as like North Carolina. So, in the winter. So it just depends on where you are. But I think if you're thinking, how can I source as close to home as possible? And how can I build my business around that? So there's a little nuance there, I'll just say, because how can I describe it? It's like, if your business is weddings and you are telling a wedding customer, I can get you peonies any time of year, that's not really sourcing as close to home as possible. What's better for our model is to say, I can get peonies for you in the third week of May to the second week of June. And outside of that, I can get something else beautiful for you. It's building a business around sourcing as close to home as possible, rather than just saying, oh, sure, I'll just order from the wholesaler and get those peonies from Holland or Ethiopia or wherever I'm getting them. So there's two parts of that. We do source local year round, but we also have built a business around educating customers about local sourcing.
And, I think soon after we first met is when I became aware that you just didn't source locally. You and Eric actually invested in cultivating farmers, meaning you helped financially to get them started, to mentor them, and you committed to buy everything they grew, right? For like the first year or something like that.
It's funny because those relationships, we have a rose grower right now that we did that with. We promised to buy everything she had the first year to encourage her to continue growing. We're now at the end of the third year and we have continued to take everything she has. And she has, 10 times her size since she started. I think what we thought as a business, what partially was very selfish. We had one of our farmers, one of our first farmers that we bought from passed away, Mel Heath, who was an amazing farmer, just a lovely man that we bought a lot of stuff from. And what we thought after Mel died was, wait, how is this business sustainable if everybody we're buying from is aging, is heading towards retirement? They don't have succession plans for their farms. So what are we going to do if more people retire or decide they don't want to farm anymore? Or we have to find some young farmers. We have to find some new farmers. And what we found was that, at least in our region, most of the people who were getting into farming were getting into food farming for environmental and food justice reasons, which is terrific. But what we wanted to do was let them know that flowers was also an option, and that we had to figure out as a business how we could put some incentives in place to try to get some of those vegetable and new farmers to try out flowers. So we did everything we could. We gave loans. We made buying promises where we would buy everything they had for, an entire year. We pre-bought crops that were not grown yet, which,
crazy stuff.
Right. We did everything we could to try to encourage people both to grow during the season and to grow in the winter. And some of those relationships didn't work. Some people tried it and decided they didn't want to do flowers. Some, like Hill and Homestead or Butterbee Farm, are, going into their 10th year growing and are just leading the way for local farmers. And so, yeah, we have tried to work really hard to encourage growers to get into flowers.
First off, hats off to you, Ellen. I mean, really putting the rubber on the road. And I truly believe I can still remember I don't know if you do that day in a hotel lobby when I interrupted and bombed your quiet time. We were at a big conference. And I just couldn't shut up talking to her about how I thought, and I had just gotten my first book, Cool Flowers, had just come out. And I was just telling Ellen, you've got to write a book about what you're doing. It's like exactly what every flower farmer's dream customer would be, right? And we've got to get you out there teaching other people. And what you and Eric have done is really just, a real gift to the industry and to all the people that are going to find their way to what I believe is the way to practice a flower business, meaning not being a grower. Whether you're doing weddings or having a flower shop or whatever, what y'all are doing is what I think people dream of. And then they get into the business and find out it's about cracking open boxes with flowers that have been flown in from 2 weeks ago and, stripping thorns. And, it's just not as dreamy and not that your job is dreamy. I'm not painting it that.
It's not, but what it is that it is not faceless.
Yes, that's it.
It is faced. It is every day seeing. It's so funny. This is just like a little thing that I thought. Laura Beth from Butterbee Farm came over to the shop on Saturday, and she stopped at the farmer's market before she came over. And I said, "Oh, did you have a good time at the market?" And she said, "Oh, I saw John McEwen there." And he's a flower farmer. He was our first flower farmer that we bought from. And she said, "I hardly ever see him anymore. Everybody's so busy. It's such a joy to see him and talk to him and to, always hear his stories." And I said, I feel so fortunate that I get to see him every week, that I get to talk to him every week, that I get to be in relationship with him. I'm like teary, like over John, and he's so curmudgeonly and like miserable. But that's what I mean. It is a face-to-face relationship business, and it is not getting flowers in a box from somebody that you don't know. It is going to somebody's farm who you care about their family and their life and understanding what their situation is, and taking this product that they have so lovingly grown and sharing it with a community that they may not have access to. And it is a special thing. And
It is
nobody
really.
tell John McEwen that I got teary thinking about him, because he'll never let me.
All right, I'm emailing him as soon as we get off here. But it's just such a good point that the way that you feel about John, our customers feel about us and our flowers and our business. And it's this whole connection thing. And it's like, how do you set yourself apart? Well, we don't have to work. We do have to work hard, but it's not hard as a local flower grower, local sourcing designer or flower shop to set their self apart. Things that I wrote down here that I wanted to say, it's like all of a sudden designers can go through almost a rebirthing of their creativity instead of having to conform to the latest wedding magazine image of this bouquet that's full of peonies in November that we know is going to cost $400 just for the flowers. To learn this whole method of selling color palettes and for people to trust that you're going to deliver a gorgeous bouquet in their color palette. Yeah. No, I can't tell you what flower that's going to be. Nope. And you, in turn, have that same relationship with your growers where you're concerned. And it really is a beautiful thing. It's like, I'm like you, I'm very, I'm not an emotional kind of person, but it is so easy to get like a gush over this because it is what people want. Yeah. I think of brides and how they feel about their weddings. It's like, oh my gosh, how could you not be so much more in love with your flowers when you know the flowers were grown in your community, that the whole food chain is benefit. Your wedding is feeding the people in your community, and your flowers are going to be more gorgeous than anything that ever came out of a box.
Yep. And that is, that is not something that I pictured was going to be part of my job. Yeah. Was teaching customers about that. But like one of like the most fun things to do is to share, pictures or video with our wedding customers of the farmers harvesting their flowers, or even the farmers planting their flowers, just to say in 10 months or in 6 months, these are going to be ready for your wedding. And it really connects our customers and our farmers and our community in a really special way. And I think, everybody wants their wedding to be special and different and unique and one of a kind. And this is definitely one way to do that.
That is for sure. And, I wrote down one of the things when you and I and Dave Dowling and Jenny Love and Stephen Gretel were discussing the other day about all the opportunities that because of this whole disruption thing, that we really believe, and Jenny said it, that using local allows you to become the cream in a saturated market. It sets you apart. The foliages alone that are available locally, you haven't lived yet, right? It's like somebody not having. Yeah, it's amazing.
And it can. I was at a conference or like a farm tour a couple months ago, and Carol Carrier from Plant Masters was sitting next to me. And she said, isn't it exciting? It's so funny because our staff was like, oh my gosh, that is not exciting. She was like, isn't it exciting that we're in an industry where we never know everything? We're always learning. We're always trying new flowers. There's always new varieties. And I was like, yeah, that's what keeps this interesting and exciting. We had like, just this week, like 4 or 5 different kinds of eucalyptus from Monocacy Co-op that we had never seen before. We use eucalyptus, so many thousands of stems of eucalyptus a week, and we had never seen these. And I was like, what are these? How do we use them? What do we design with them? Let's practice how to put them in stuff. Like it's constantly changing, and it's very exciting, and there's lots of opportunities to continue learning.
And, that just brings me back. I know I keep saying it, but it seems to me that local and seasonality, which comes when you use local source flowers, just hits that soft spot in these people that were drawn to become designers in the first place.
Yeah.
You are turned loose. I mean, that whole creativity just is enhanced all over again after making the same old things with the same old flowers. It's so funny that one of the big shops that we sold to for years, I mean, he was high volume. He just did a lot of flowers. I can always remember the first delivery. I mean, his shop is like 2 minutes from my farm. The first delivery of every year, he has this big, wide open workroom with lots of people working, and he's in the middle, and they're all just working feverishly. When I walk in, he would just yell at the top of his lungs, "Finally, the real flowers are back," And it's like everybody now realizes that each week, and that's something else that that excitement that I've often explained to people when I would pull into their shops with my van. I mean, they would come out and look in my van. My van was already sold, I mean, they just got what they ordered, but it's so exciting. It's not anything like traditional, conventional floristry, right?
No, it is. It's really fun.
So, all right. So I want to hear about what I think is my most favorite part of your business model. So Ellen has rekindled what the flower shops, and I actually wrote this down, and I thought you're going to think I am but since you got teary, I'm going to say this. I feel like the business model that you have developed or rekindled, let's say that, is like the version of the Hallmark movie of a flower shop. It's true. It's like, I mean, it's so much more. I just want to say to Hallmark movies, y'all need to get a local sourced flower shop in one of these things, and we'll be happy to hook you up. Exactly. But it's like that dreaminess that people love what they do and all about it. You've done that in this business model that you have brought back and made possible in today's time, right?
Yeah, we like I was saying before about sort of like the idea of serving your community through a business. While I was getting into gardening and I liked flowers, and I'm not going to say in the beginning I loved design. I was challenged by design. I liked it, but what I loved was being in community with people and serving my community, and flowers were the way that we did that. And so community development, not only in my past, but in my current life, was always sort of the center of what we did. And so we always knew that we were not going to just be selling flowers for weddings. We were also going to be taking people on tours of flower farms so that they could see where flowers were grown. We were going to be inviting them into the shop for a book club where farmers and community members and other floral designers got together to talk about books and issues and nature and environmentalism. And we were going to offer floral design classes. And I did not know then that we would be offering, chopped style design competitions and holiday markets and space for our other business community members to meet and to build their businesses. And local flowers allowed us to do all of these things. They were the tool. They continue to be the tool. So while we are super excited about flowers, we love our farmers, we love designing, we also love what local flowers allows us to do. Just a note about the book club, I always say to people, if you own your own business, you can do whatever you want. If you want to have a weird book club about nature, you can do that. And some of the relationships that we have built, and this is something we talk about in the class, is like, how do you offer things to people at all levels? The book club is free. It's been meeting for 8 years. It is a way to be part of LocoFlow. It's a way to be part of the local flower community. You don't have to spend any money. You don't have to buy anything. You can just be part of the community. And if you want to pay us $15,000 to do your wedding flowers, you can do that too. But there's all kinds of way to be in community with us, and for us to be in community with you, with local flowers as the tool.
And so the other part, so I'm so glad you mentioned those things. So this is the Hallmark movie part of the shop. So in addition to doing flowers, you guys also dry everything that you don't use fresh, because you then, like the month of November and December, I think you're really big into making dried wreaths.
Yep.
And by the way, folks, there is in the show notes below this podcast, Ellen did a webinar about making dried wreaths, and she would love for you to have it. And so you can just find that down below. So they do dried wreaths.
Yep.
Then your shop is not a regular retail open 9 to 5. You just have like Saturday retail hours, right?
Yep. So our space, like the actual physical space, looks like a garage, like a two-door garage if you were driving down the street. Totally open inside. The main design space, everything's on wheels so that we can rearrange the space to be anything we want it to be. We have garden clubs come in and have speakers in there. So we want to move all the tables to one side, or people want to have parties. So we, set up chairs and use those as cocktail tables. There's all kinds of stuff we do. But right, we do so much more than just sort of floral design in that way. So on Saturdays, we're open to the public 8 to noon. And that's really our only retail hours. So I know it's weird because Eric and I were at a concert once, and this girl, I think one of us had a Locoflow hat on, and she said, "Oh, aren't you that flower shop that's never open?" And we were like, "Yeah, that's us.
That's us."
Yeah, 4 hours. We're open 4 hours a week. Before COVID, we were open 8 hours a week. Now we're only open 4 hours a week. But that's because we do a million other things. We are in our flower community doing all kinds of other things, and retail is just one small part of that.
And, don't you find that's the cusp of it right there? You're out with the people that are wanting you, instead of sitting in a shop and hoping the right customer comes in.
Totally. There was never a time, we never pictured the business being, a 9 to 5, somebody
Right.
sits there and waits for somebody to come in. It was never that. It was always, how are we going to do all of these fun things with flowers? How are we going to do design classes and retail and book club and weddings and subscriptions and special event? We're going to do it all. And that means that we're not just sitting in the shop waiting for customers.
Right.
It might be, having an event, having a floral design class from 7 to 10 some night. We might be, out at the farms picking up flowers, or doing design classes out at the farm. So yeah, it's a wide range of stuff, and only 4 hours of it is us being at the shop waiting for customers to come over.
And that is just so smart. And so you did just mention in passing that you guys have like this chopped flower arranging wars. You have a book club. I think that these are just some of this is what is so much fun for everybody.
Yeah. Thinking outside of the box. It's thinking, how can I'll tell the short version of the story. We have a design competition every year called Bloom Battle, Amateur Floral Design Competition. 15 people every year. You can sign up to be in it, and you compete on design. And we've been doing it for years. And after several years, all the same people enter, which is hilarious, because they love it, and they're all friends now. They said to us, "Can't we do more together as a group? Can't we do more things flower related at Locoflow with all these people that we've met through Bloom Battle?" And I said, "All right, sure. What would it be like?" And somebody said, one of our customers said, "Oh, a flower club." And I said, Eric and I said, "Okay, well, let's think of what that could be." So this started right before COVID. We had flower trivia night, which was free. We had 100 people come.
Wow.
Flower trivia. They were packed in. So teams of 6 for flower trivia, which was amazing. We had, a chopped style competition where people signed up and you were given mystery items, including flowers and foliage and seed pods and all kinds of other things. And you had to create a design and then present it to the group. All of these things, these aren't just even all my ideas. I mean, they're mostly ideas that somebody else came up with, and I probably said, oh, it'll never work, but sure enough, it's amazing. And it was like, okay, Flower Club came about because our flower people wanted to spend time doing more flower things together. I mean, it's like the most perfect situation.
It is really, really true. And, you know, and I want to just, we're coming to the close to the end here. And, during the pandemic, when that first broke out, and I mean, I was with you and Jenny Love and Dave Dowling, and I forget who the other person was, another farmer florist. Oh, it was Jonathan and Megan Lease, who just grow for florists. I mean, that first week after they closed down the world, I mean, everybody was stunned, in tears. I mean, you watched your business fall apart in a week as every wedding you had planned for 2 years just canceled or had to reschedule or whatever. And so then 2 weeks after that, and all of you guys just refeathered your nests. And I'm not even using that P word, pivoting. Everybody just found another way to sell their flowers. But what I'm getting at is, not only are y'all like true entrepreneurs and you nailed it, but your customers ran to support you, right? Do you think that happened to Joe Blow Flower Shop?
No, I mean,
nobody even remembered that that's who did Aunt Susie's wedding or funeral last year.
It was really amazing. It was something I did not expect in any sort of way. It was truly overwhelming. Those first couple weeks, Eric and I were here at the house, sort of doing the admin side, and our staff and our farmers. We had our farmers were delivering orders for us to our customers because we had so many orders from customers. Eric and I, for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours a day, would just process orders, and the staff and Butterbee Farm and her staff would go out and deliver for us, because everybody wanted to say, we care about you. We want you to stay in business. We don't want you to fail. We believe in you. And it was totally unexpected and not the experience that many small business owners had.
And it is all based on that community building, relationships, having a story, connecting the dots. And Ellen, I just think what you have done, that you are just really recutting a pathway through the weeds of the way that we used to do it, which, I mean, haven't we gone full circle in so many things? It's like, remember how our grandmas used to can, and then all of us were like, I don't have to can. I can afford to buy stuff in a can at the store, and here we are. Who has a pantry full of canned stuff? Me.
Yeah,
we make time because it's better. It's the way it should have been done the whole way, and you being this, carrying the flag in front of everybody else that's fallen in behind you, is just, we appreciate you so much. And I know it's not always been easy. Swimming upstream isn't always easy.
But it's worth it.
So thank you for joining me. I do feel like I know a little bit more about you and your business. And I'm just really proud and thrilled to work with you on getting your course out to the world. And we're really excited for what the new year has. And even in light of the crazy floral shortage. Now, Ellen, have you experienced any flower shortages?
No. In fact, I mean, this is a weird thing to say, because I just told somebody the other day that juxtaposition of stories in the world right now are very strange, because if you look at social media, if you look at newsletters and, all of the stuff coming out of the industry about these shortages, like, I understand that it's really happening. I know florists that it's happening too. But I am having farmers texting me multiple times a week saying, we have thousands of dahlias. Please buy more. Nobody else, no, we have so many flowers. where are the people with the shortages? We have the flowers. So it's a very strange situation where there is a very large disconnect between,
Yes.
well, we haven't seen any sort of shortage. Certainly we see shortages in hard goods, but for flowers, we have not seen any sort of shortage. If anything, there is like
An abundance.
yes.
And what about price increases?
No, we haven't
Yeah.
seen.
And that's really a big
Our
part.
dahlias went up this year. Dahlias went up by a quarter, and that was a big increase, but it was one specialty crop, and the prices had not been raised in several years. And so it was totally, in line with normal
Right.
business procedures. But no, we're not seeing any sort of major increases or, sticker shock on normal priced things that are now ridiculously priced. No, we're not seeing any of it.
And, anyway, so thank you so much for joining me here, Ellen. And I'm just so glad to bring your story to the wider audience, and just so appreciate everything you're doing for the industry. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to have been here.
All right, folks. Wasn't that just, I saw so many pieces that I had never really thought about or imagined after talking to Ellen and getting a deeper look into her business. And I will tell you one thing. I've done a couple of podcast interview chats with Ellen here recently, and I would highly recommend that you check out the other podcast that we've just done of going inside her course. We go through her syllabus lesson by lesson, and she kind of tells you what it's about and what she was thinking. But I just see so much power in knowledge and self-confidence. And I love what Ellen said in one of my interviews, is that to her, only using locally sourced flowers is her secret power. It has nothing to do with, oh gosh, you buy local, that means you have to do without. It is nothing like that. People don't know what they're missing by not buying local flowers. The foliages are spectacular, stuff you will never see coming from a wholesaler, right? And I, again, will say that I totally back saying that any flower farmer that wants to grow their expertise, that wants to ramp up their business, would definitely benefit from walking with Ellen through this course. Who doesn't want to know more about their customer and what they're thinking and what they need and how it works and their challenges, all of those things. But the marketing also in this course is very beneficial. So friends, down below the show notes, there's a link to Ellen's course. I'm going to put a link to her syllabus. I'll also link Amy Stewart's book, Flower Confidential, which is the book that really changed Ellen. It's like the book that changed my life was The Flower Farmer by Lynn Basinski. Flower Confidential did that for a lot of people in the designing area of this cut flower food chain. So friends, until we meet again, check out thegardenersworkshop.com. You can learn more, and we're happy for you to DM myself or Ellen anytime. All right, folks. Ciao.